HOA banned me from dredging my 150-year-old ranch pond, so I poured concrete. Into their water line asterisk, I've lived on the same ranch my family has owned since 1875, 5 generations of sweat, cattle, and soil. Nestled in the foothills of the Bitterroot Mountains, the land is more than property to me. It's memory, it's legacy. So when the newly formed Homeowners Association, made up mostly of recent transplants in their pristine cul-de-sacs, started throwing their weight around, they messed with the wrong rancher. It all started when I decided to dredge the old pond. Over the years, it had filled with silt, runoff, and enough reeds to hide a whole herd. My grandfather used to fish for trout there. Now you could barely spot water between the weeds. Dredging it wasn't just for nostalgia, it was essential. The cattle depended on it during the dry season, and it helped maintain the irrigation flow for our alfalfa fields. I filed the necessary environmental paperwork, hired a local contractor, and was just days away from starting when I received a cease and desist letter signed by the HOA president herself, one Janet Monroe. Apparently, she believed the dredging would disturb the natural aesthetic of the neighborhood. Mind you, the nearest house was over a mile away from the pond and separated by acres of trees and fencing. Still, they claimed the pond contributed to the shared watershed of the subdivision. They used a twisted interpretation of zoning regulations to argue they had a say. I went to the board meeting, boots muddy and hat in hand, to try to explain. They didn't even let me finish before Janet cut me off, saying, "Sir, you may own land, but you're still part of a community. We voted, and it's final. It's no dredging." That's when I knew they weren't just being cautious, they were trying to control me. They saw my ranch, not as heritage, but as a future development opportunity they hadn't acquired yet. I left that meeting steaming over the next few weeks. I tried reasoning. I sent emails. I invited them out to see the pond. I even offered to put up a tree line and visual barriers to keep things out of sight. All refused. The HOA had made up its mind. No dredging. No exceptions. Then I noticed something strange during one of my evening walks. A newly installed PVC pipeline ran from a pump station just outside my property fence across my land toward the subdivision. I did some digging, both literally and bureaucratically, and found out they had quietly routed a section of their new eco-irrigation system. Through an easement my grandfather had signed in 1986, that easement allowed for basic utility access. But they twisted that into meaning they could run water pipes across my land without proper notice. That was it. I contacted my attorney, who confirmed what I already knew. While I couldn't stop them from using the easement, I could legally excavate on my land provided I didn't directly damage the pipe without cause. So I found a cause. Late one Sunday evening, under the soft hum of locusts and the quiet blanket of dusk, I set out with my skid steer and a few bags of industrial-grade quickset concrete. I carefully dug around the section of pipe on my land, exposing a T-junction they had installed to draw water from a nearby creek. I poured the concrete into that junction, not damaging the pipe itself. Mind you, just filling the connector. By morning, it was a hardened, immovable mass. It didn't take long for them to notice. By Monday afternoon, half the sprinkler systems in the HOA's prized gardens had stopped working. Janet called, screaming that I'd sabotaged community infrastructure. I calmly informed her I had done routine land maintenance. And if something had accidentally been sealed off, perhaps they should have informed me they were using my land. So extensively, she threatened legal action. I welcomed it over the next week. The HOA scrambled to reroute their system. I had made sure that concrete plug wasn't going anywhere soon. No contractor wanted to risk cutting the main line without triggering more damage. Eventually, they had to install a whole new system on their own property, which cost them tens of thousands of dollars. All that lush HOA landscaping started wilting in the July sun, and oh, the howls from the neighborhood Facebook page. But it wasn't over. Now that they were on the defensive, I went back to the county zoning board, this time armed with pictures, maps, emails, and a petition signed by every rancher and long-term resident in the valley. Turns out, most of them had been steamrolled by the HOA in one way or another. With enough pressure, the board finally re-examined the HOA's claim over the watershed. They ruled that the pond was historic and privately maintained, and therefore not subject to subdivision oversight. I dredged the pond the next day. That murky water finally turned clear again. The frogs came back. The herons returned, and for the first time in a decade, I watched trout flash beneath the surface. Like silver ghosts, my cattle drank from the fresh edge, and my daughter, just like I once did, caught her first bluegill on a summer morning with mist still clinging to the banks. As for the HOA, well, they tried to retaliate petty violations, threats of fines, complaint letters about dust from machinery, and excessive mooing. But with the new legal precedent and growing community support, their power started to fade. Gannett eventually stepped down, replaced by someone who actually grew up in the county. Imagine that. To this day, that concrete plug remains under my soil. A buried reminder to any future meddler that my land, my pond, and my family's legacy won't be pushed around by a committee worried about property values and curb appeal. Out here, we don't deal in memos and meetings. We deal in grit. You want war over a pond? Then prepare to water your roses with bottled water asterisk?